Danny from Hawks Insiders is here to chat everything about the freezing cold Tassie weather.
Arnie at the bounce, wants to take them on, runs to 50, runs inside, a sidestep, another bounce, has the shot, oh baby!
Welcome back to Further North, everybody. We're previewing a massive game down in Launceston, and all transparency here, we've done this once. I'm going to be honest with my listeners, Danny. We've got Danny here from Hawks Insiders. We had some technical issues, but we're back again, mate. So we're going to rehash some old stuff, but we're going to try and keep the energy up.
A little bit like the Hawks and the Roos this year. We've had some technical issues across the morning, but we'll get there. We'll get there. And it's great to join you, Josh, here on Further North. Excited to have a chat about the game.
Unreal. Well, look, let's get into it. A big game this week. I want your thoughts on the Hawks. Where did you sort of have them this year on the ladder? What was your expectation going into it? And are they meeting it, up, down? Give me the spiel.
Look, they're probably meeting it, to be honest, but to say that is way too simplistic because the Hawks season has been segmented into sort of a few different spots. It's been the first sort of 5-6 weeks, the next block, and then the last couple. So I think in order to understand the expectations for this year for Hawks fans and for the Hawthorn Footy Club, you got to understand last year's Hawkball run into the final series, which was incredible. And if I'm honest, Josh, probably one of the most enjoyable periods of time I've had as a supporter outside of winning grand finals, right? Because there was just no expectations. It was an absolute free hit. The Hawks caught sort of magic in a bottle and just went. And it was just so exciting to rock up to the footy every week and be like, what's going to happen? And it doesn't matter because we didn't have, as fans, because of the poor start, any expectations on this team to do any real damage. So, the elimination final last year against the Doggies was incredible. Hawks Insiders actually did a pre-match for Hawthorn or Hawks Radio on SEN, and the vibe with, a packed out MCG going there and dismantling the Bulldogs, even without Will Day, was pretty special. The problem when you have final success and then you bomb out the next week against Port Adelaide in Adelaide is there are expectations on your footy club the next year to take the next step. So the Hawks had to work out a way, and this is sort of where I think we've sort of struggled, is they had to work out a way to go from being the hunter to being the hunted. And teams come for good teams, and the Hawks were then considered a good team. We got a much tougher draw than we had last year. And then, there were teams that had different expectations when they came to face us. So, first five weeks, the Hawks were pretty decent without really firing on all cylinders. There was some good football in patches, but no full 4-quarter performances. But the results were there. So you don't complain about wins, do you? You just move on to the next one and you hopefully build from it. But then there was a sort of a dead patch in the middle where the Hawks' intent and intensity and effort probably wasn't at a level that you would hope or expect. And we got found out by some good sides. There was a big loss to Gold Coast up in the top north in Darwin, and we don't play the Gold Coast well anywhere, but let alone in Darwin, we have really struggled playing them there. Some of our poorest performances have come up there. The Pies handled us pretty comfortably, and then the Lions did too. So, three losses, which all looked pretty ordinary. And yeah, I don't know. It was a bit like, oh, are we good? Are we not good? I think the reality is Hawthorn fans early in the season didn't think the Hawks were incredible. The media did, right? So they built us up. Is Hawkball going to take them to a premiership? Blah, 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 blah. Then we had the down patch and the media jumped right off us and we're laying in and we're going, okay, Sam Mitchell said it, and a lot of good coaches say it, you're never as good or as bad as you think you are. And that's rung true for this Hawthorn side this year. So, we come into the bye in a pretty decent position. Probably could have been better, might have been worse. But at the end of the day, I think we're kind of at expectation. I don't think we're a top 4 side in the competition this year. I think we are trying to establish who we are within that upper echelon of the teams in the AFL. But it's really interesting to see, the ebbs and the flows, the peaks and the troughs of a team in season, when last year, after the bye, every round felt like a final, elimination final. So, it's a really interesting place for the Hawks to be in at the moment.
You spoke about the media a little bit, and this is a segue I wish I used the first time into this, but Clarkson. Your old
Yes.
coach, I want to know your sort of thoughts on him. He's come under so much criticism from the media. And then this morning there's papers putting out things to do with him being a master. It's a master class and this is the Clarkson effect and all this sort of stuff. I've always been a massive Clarkson backer, and everyone knows, listen to the podcast, that I think it's going to be a longer process. We're not going to explode like the Hawks. It's going to be a gradual thing. It's not always linear, and it is going to take a few more years to us to get to where we want to go. Give us a quick rundown on your thoughts on him as a coach and what he did for your club and what he can do for our club.
Well, first thing I'll say, and we didn't touch on this the first time we recorded, so maybe we're doing the right thing here, Josh, is that Clarkson has no interest in the media, right? So at Hawthorn, when Clarkson was in charge, the answers he'd give the media at press conferences and stuff like that were by the book, dot the I's, cross the T's, give nothing away. It was never about divulging or looking behind the curtain. I'm sure he's the same at North because, you don't change who you are as a human being at Clarkson's age. So I think from a media speculation point of view for North Melbourne, and like I said before, the ebbs and flows of the media love in or pile on, Clarkson won't give a stuff about what the media is saying because I guarantee you he doesn't read it.
Yeah.
So it won't get into the four walls, and that will be pushed down to his players, whether they were at Hawthorn back in the day or now when he's at North. Alistair Clarkson is one of the top 10 most influential people to come through the doors at Hawthorn Footy Club. Make no bones about it. So there is a lot of love from Hawthorn fans to Alistair Clarkson. He is a genius. The Hawks, when they were looking to recruit a new head coach, there's a lot of stories around the fact that they actually wanted a Hawthorn old boy. It was down, Rodney Eade, Gary Ayres, and Alistair Clarkson. But when he came in, Clarko, and he made his presentation, he knocked the socks off those he presented to. And I think it's Jason Dunstall said then and there, this is our next head coach. Now, he was a nobody. He was a teacher, an ex sort of hard man for North and for Melbourne, but not a great player by any means, but a phenomenal football brain. And the way that he took the Hawks from being pretty trash with some good young talent to winning the 2008 flag was incredible to watch as a footy fan, as a Hawthorn fan. The way he manipulated the rules of the time to suit what he was trying to do. The 2008 grand final, post that game, they changed the rush behind rule because Hawthorn exploited it to get quick kicks out of their back line to clear the back 50 and to get the ball moving really quick. So they quickly rush it, sprint forward, play on, kick it long. We had some really good kicks of the footy, and that was a Clarkson special. He came in and introduced or made it a priority that the people recruited to the Hawthorn Footy Club could use the ball really, really well by foot. And we had great skilled players across every line, whether you were looking at, some of the recycled players he brought in, like Brent Guerra, some of the lesser named players like Matty Suckling, Taylor Xerri. They were good kicks of the footy. Through the middle, we had some absolute superstars, Sam Mitchell, Luke Hodge, Jordan Lewis, Sean Burgoyne. And then up front, you had really clever, creative, good ball users as well. Jared Ruffhead, Lance Franklin, Cyril Rioli, guys like that. So, that team was stacked. Don't get me wrong, but it's the way he brought in a collection of players to execute the game plan he had, which is what separated that Hawthorn team from other teams that were good at the time. And if we think about the three-peat team, there was an evolving tactical masterclass happening throughout those years based on the personnel that came in and came out at the time, based on what was allowed and what wasn't allowed. I don't know if you've seen as much of that from Clarkson at North yet, but what I will say is when you guys get better and better and better, and this next group of young talent, and you've got it, starts to take that step forward, watch him build a game plan around the players you have to get you guys the best success. And you'll appreciate his mind so much when you get to that point.
Yeah, he said at our Best and Fairest awards night, the previous one, that he finally feels like he's got a list that he can build a game plan around. That was his exact words. And I think we've sort of started to see that this year. A lot of the fan base was very, I'm not saying anti-Clarkson at all, but heavily questioning that he's the right guy and saying he's too old. And, obviously there's a natural flip in the last couple of months. We've played a lot better football. And And I haven't heard much praise for him until genuinely after this Carlton game. And I understand it takes longer for maybe the outside world to give him praise than a North Melbourne fan who watches it every week. But you can see the Clarkson blueprint coming together all over it. And maybe some of us have been able to see it a little bit longer or just understood it takes time. But I think he's really starting to do that. We touched on it previously where, a lot of Hawks players did stay for less money and didn't want to fly the coop. And you were still the same team after Buddy left as well. And you got better.
Yeah,
after
I'd say
Buddy
we were a better
Franklin.
team. Yeah, and it was because and I'm not saying, look, Buddy is probably right up there with one of the top two favourite players and best players I've seen at the
One of the
Hawthorn
best of
Footy
all time
Club.
in the AFL.
Just a phenomenal player. But he had this aura. It was like players couldn't help but kick it to him every single time they went forward. Now, that's good if he's on and but it's also counterable by the opposition coach. You can double team, you can block the space, you can drop players back in the hole, and Franklin wasn't a huge contested mark either, so you couldn't just bomb it in there and hope for the best. When Buddy actually left and they had Roughhead, David Hale spent more time down forward, and then you had Gunston, Bruce, Cyril, Poppy with a small mobile forward line. We were more dangerous because we were more unpredictable. And everybody played their role and they knew their role. And I think that's one of the great things about Clarkson is he didn't need to have the superstar to take him to the promised land. He would understand and work out ways to win with the players he had at his disposal. And I think that's really exciting. I think you've probably already gone through it, but when he came to the Hawks, the first couple of years were the clear house years. He identified all the players that either weren't on the timeline or weren't the style of player he wanted or couldn't execute what he was trying to ask them to do, and he just moved them on. And it was cutthroat, and it was like, Jonathan Hay gone to North, Lance Baccioni gone, these Nathan Thompson gone, and it was like, get rid of these guys who had been good servants for our footy club, but he had an idea, he had a plan, and he was relentless in his pursuit of it. And I think if one thing sums up Alistair Clarkson, he's got an absolutely relentless mindset for success. So if anybody's going to bring this North group of players to a successful period, it's going to be somebody like Clarkson. I would say that at the Hawks, his time was up. He had sort of outgrown his stay at Hawthorn, but that's a timing thing too, right? And that doesn't mean that because his stay at Hawthorn was up, he couldn't coach anymore. I think he'd just been there for too long. The voice was stale. The message wasn't getting through anymore. Now he's got a new bunch of players, a new club, a new culture. It all starts again. And we touched on this the first time we recorded, but if you want to look at the success of Alistair Clarkson as a coach, sure, you can look at the 4 premierships at Hawthorn, but look at the Hawthorn and Alistair Clarkson coaching academy and look at the line of assistant coaches that have come through the Hawks, come into their own club and been incredibly successful, from Luke Beveridge, Adam Simpson, Chris Fagan, Dimmer Hardwick, Craig McRae. It's endless, right? So that speaks to who Clarkson is. He's a teacher first, and he surrounds himself with human beings and assistant coaches and people within his footy department that are teachers first, because he's really keen to understand the human being ahead of understanding the player. So I think he's phenomenal. I think the first couple of years when he left the Hawks and there was all the all the way up until the end of last year, there was like heavy clouds around Clarkson because of the Hawthorn racism saga, the responsibility that was put on his shoulders, the weight he had to carry. That would have been incredibly hard for anybody to try to carry and have a full-time job at a different club at the same time. Now that that's lifted a little bit, I think you'll start to see a happier, more jovial Clarko, not the wall-punching Clarko that some of us remember at the Hawks.
He nearly put his fist through the wall, he said a couple of weeks ago as well, which was fantastic. I mean, yeah, I believe everything you say. I mean, that's how I've always felt about him as well. And you want someone who is, fearless and passionate and expresses it as well. I think it's a happy thing. But then when he needs to be reserved, needs to keep everything in-house, he does that as well. And you can see the change at North where you're right. The amount of players I actually would love, actually, I'm going to do this later now. I've decided. I'm going to look at the team that was the first team he ever put out on the park when
Yep.
he came into the football club compared to what it is now. We've
Yep.
saved so many of the good players we want, and we've got rid of so many of the guys that were list cloggers that have, and barely any of them have gone to another club. So he's doing a fantastic job. Coming up to this game, have you watched much of North? And is there something that you're worried about us doing to you? Is there a way we can exploit you at all, or something that North do that makes you a little bit like, geez, we better get on top of that and make sure North don't exploit us in that way?
Yeah, look, the Hawks build their game plan on their defensive setup. The midfield, especially without Will Day at the moment, are sort of, I would say, middle of the pack. Lloyd Meek does a really good job in the ruck. He's a big bash and crash ruckman who, can throw his weight around, but he's quite mobile and gets around the ground pretty well. The midfield underneath him are Connor Nash, Jai Newcomb, James Warple, and then others. Those guys are, I think Jai Newcomb is borderline A grade, but the other guys are real warriors. They're soldiers. They're in and under. They'll do the hard stuff, but they're not flashy. They're not clean, and they're not upper echelon players. So if teams can get on top of our midfield unit and get clear, free, easy, unpressured forward 50 entries through their clearances in the center, that's when we look most vulnerable. When we're given time to set up behind the ball, we have a great shape. We have great individual defenders, and then we like to springboard and slingshot off that halfback flank and get our half forwards pushing up to the wing and then run and carry. And that's the hock ball that everybody sees, but the hock ball that actually is the foundation of what hock ball actually was is that defensive setup and that defensive pressure whole ground. So I'm really interested, Josh, to be honest, is how North Melbourne try to exploit that midfield dominance that they might feel like they have. They've got some great players in that space. Tristan Xerri's probably, I would say, he's probably one of the best top two ruckmen in the comp, if not the best at the moment. And he gives phenomenal service to his midfielders with, at the same time, winning his own centre clearances as well. Like he's a rare beast. So, if he can get on top of Meek, and if the LDUs, the Simpkins, and guys like that can win the first ball, you might have some joy that way, and that's the way to get at the Hawks.
One way I think we exploited Carlton really well on the weekend was Larky sort of pushed up the ground more, was doing a lot of contested work, some really nice contested marks, which I think he's added to his game, not in an elite fashion at all, but he's got a lot better at taking contested marks and sort of left a lot of space behind him for Zerha and for Paul Curtis to sort of be one-on-one. I mean, there was 5 goals between them, but I think Paul Curtis kicked 3 points. So it could have been an absolute day out for the both of them. Do you have matchups down there for those players that you would trust? Is that an area that you look at and go, I think we can cover it, or maybe another one we could exploit potentially?
Look, Paul Curtis is a player. He's a serious talent. I don't think the footy world's really caught on to how good Paul Curtis is. But as a small forward, he does a bit of everything. When he's in form, when he's going, he's tough to stop. I think as a small defender, Blake Hardwick's one of the best one-on-one small defenders, and he probably matches up quite well with Curtis purely because he's really good in the air and he's very strong. And if you look at the way Curtis shifts his defenders, he does it with his hips. He's very strong through the core. So that'll be a really fascinating matchup for me. I anticipate Hardwick will go to Curtis, and I'm really interested to see how that one plays out. The other one is obviously Zerha. When Larky and Barassa are very, I think, sort of clear matchup. Yeah. If Larky pushes forward, they might release him and let somebody else go with him up the line and let him have those marks sort of at half forward on the wing. When he comes in, Barras likes to be the marshal of that defensive 50.
Yeah.
Josh Battle on Cam Zerha is one that I think would work as a matchup from a Hawthorn perspective. Because Battle, despite being a key position size, actually can play quite a bit smaller.
I always saw him as more of because when he came over from St Kilda, I was not watching heaps of the Saints, but I sort of saw him as that medium-sized halfback, almost more of like a Dan Houston-esque sort of player. And then people said he's key position size. And I was like, surely he's not. And he just didn't play in that sort of way. So you're right. That's actually a pretty good matchup for him. All right, so we just need a prediction from you for this game. And for those watching on YouTube, there's a slight costume change, more tech issues, different day, but same us. We're here. Predict it for me, mate. Is North going to absolutely destroy the Hawks on the weekend, or am I dreaming?
Yeah, that's not quite what I've got, Josh. I'm tipping it'll be closer than maybe most people think. I'm going for a 4-goal Hawks win, but I think it'll all depend on the start. We've chatted about Hawks starts have been a little bit ordinary, so I think it'll be dependent on how Hawthorn starts. If they start well, I think they win fairly comfortably and maybe just in a bit of a canter. But if North can get in the game early, who knows what can happen? That's kind of where I sit at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great test after such a good patch of form for us. I mean, we talked about the last 6 weeks, but obviously with the win, coming against the Blues, can we repeat the same game plan? If we play the same against the Hawks, I think the Hawks are a much stronger outfit than the Blues are, obviously. But yeah, I don't know. I'm always the pessimist on the pod. Everyone who listens knows that. And I didn't tip us last week, and I feel stupid for not, but I don't know. I don't know if we can do it. This is sort of a team that I don't think North should be messing with just yet in our development. So if we can keep them honest and we can stay in the game in the fourth quarter and they kick a couple, and like four goals or so, I think is a fair enough sort of scoreline. I'm really interested to see if we can keep this one close, because if we can keep it close and make it hard for the Hawks, it's another massive piece of evidence that we have turned some sort of corner,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing's for sure, Clarko's going to be absolutely up for this one. We've talked about how important he is and how he will be a central figure for North Melbourne going forward. He's a central figure in this game. And with all the recent history, with everything moved on, there maybe won't be as much ill will or animosity there anymore, but he will be absolutely wanting to teach his pupil, Sam Mitchell, a lesson or two. There's enough weapons there in the North Melbourne lineup to be able to do some damage. I think everything needs to go right from a North Melbourne perspective for it to happen this week. But it's not out of the realm, which is a little bit scary. I think from a Hawks perspective, if we're not dealing with the likes of North Melbourne where they're at right now, we probably shouldn't be in the conversation for a top 4, top 6 spot, which is where we kind of want to be when the whips are cracking. So we would expect, I think, inside the 4 walls that it'll be a tough contest, but I believe we'd expect to be able to get the chocolates.
Well, look, anything better than last time, I'll be happy. So
surely,
surely. I mean, look, I was talking to someone today actually about North Melbourne sort of looking a lot better, but I still think there'll be a couple of weird sporadic smashings for us along the way. Like,
sure,
we still play Geelong. That's a very, very scary one. So I look at that sort of game and I'm like, oh, geez, are we really going to be able to, keep that team under wraps a little bit? But, apart from Geelong, and there was one more in there, we've got that's very, very tough. I can't remember off the top of my head, but, if we can start to rein those back in a little bit, I think we're on the right track. And the Hawks, just like I just touched on, destroyed us last year. And I hope we sort of use that as a little motivator, like we did the Carlton game, because, we talked about it a bit before, but the Carlton, it looks like we went into that game trying to right some wrongs. And if we can do that against Hawthorn, and I think Clarko will be up for that one, maybe personally, like you touched on more, even though, you said the respect is definitely there. But I know Clarkson, you know him better than I do from his time. Like he'll hold a grudge. And that's one of the things you love about him.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what good coaches do, right? They get up for the big ones. And as far as he's concerned, Hawthorn's his club. He's got so much history there and he'll want to get one over, his old family.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Last question before we go. And we've
Heavy
gone over
hitting
this
one for
before,
last,
but now
right?
I'm trying to think what were the players that I did say? So this is sort of off the cuff again, because I haven't wrote these down. Favorite North Melbourne / Hawthorn player? Go as deep and rogue as you can. You did give me an answer last recording, and I've genuinely forgotten. So can you say that bloke's name again?
It was so rogue you've forgotten who I said. So the one I went with to start with was Jason Delanchenko.
That's right.
And I think he was a tiny bit part player at North and then an even smaller part player at the Hawks. And look, this was back in the days when I was a young kid, born in 1987. So I'm not super old. I'm 38. Watching down at Waverley Park, and they had the Hawthorn reserves on before the seniors played, and I was like, oh, this blonde guy picked up from North Melbourne around the same time we picked up Joel Smith, and I thought, oh, he could be something. He could be something. He wasn't. So there you go with Jason Delanchenko. There are plenty of good Hawks and Roos that have crossed over, though. A couple that have gone from Hawthorn to North Melbourne. Jonathan Hay, who unfortunately, with the mental health issues that Hay had, we probably didn't get to see Bailiff at his absolute best. Fantastic nickname.
I haven't heard that one before.
Nah, Bailiff Hay. The galloping the galloping gasometer. Nathan Thompson was a fan favourite at the Hawks, and I'm sure he would have been exactly.
He was my favourite in this list. I was excited to bring him up. The double Cobras made for us in that game against Collingwood. It was one of the first games I remember seeing. It was I think it was in my first year of properly following North, because I found it a little bit later. I found it footy when I was 10 years old because my family wasn't into it, and I remember that was a moment where I really got into North as well. And man, the double Cobras, it doesn't get better than that. I've got that same jersey hanging up behind me as well. It's unreal.
Could flex with the best of them, Nathan Thompson, couldn't he?
I love it. I can't wait till someone else whips out a double Cobra. Oh.
Yeah, so he was a good one. I think there was a few more. Lance Baccioni was another that crossed over. Who else?
Gibson, Hale.
Josh Gibson and David Hale became premiership superstars for the Hawks.
Hale won a Coleman for us too. Not a Coleman, won our leading goal kicker. Yeah.
He kicked 8 against Geelong once for you guys.
Yeah. I don't know what year that was. 2007 to 9 was his period that he was really just like our pillar up forward before Petrie. Really, I don't think him and Petrie partnered too much. I feel like Petrie was either like ruck or sort of back at that point, but that was almost prime Hamish McIntosh era, so I don't know.
Oh man, prime Hamish McIntosh. Oh. That's now we're going rogue. I think David Hale underrated by a lot, and his importance to the Hawthorn three-peat era is really understated, I think. Obviously, he became really important, especially when Buddy moved on, because we didn't actually bring in another tall marking target. We just pinched hit him forward a lot more, and he was so effective. Could clunk a contested mark, but was also incredibly smart in the forward 50. Like a genuine forward option. And so he had a lot of impact on the Hawks structure and allowed the Gunstons and the Roughheads and the more heralded players to go and do their job. So he was really, really important, and then gave big boy McAvoy the chop out when he needed it, sort of 5 minutes a quarter, nothing more. And, that worked perfectly for somebody like McAvoy, who was a first ruck, who wanted to ruck all day, and endurance was one of his strengths. So really, really important. And then Josh Gibson was legitimately a star for the Hawks. And I think we touched on this last time we tried to record. He was trialled as an inside midfielder, I think, and it kind of wasn't working at North. And then we took him and, put him in the back line and turned him into a really undersized but very effective key position player. Was one of the players that Buddy had nightmares coming up against, when he played the Hawks. And he was phenomenal. And best and fairest in a premiership year are impressive. He had 2 of them. So
I forgot. I didn't know he won a best and fairest for the Hawks. That's crazy stuff. He was very, very good. He had the fro with us too, and then when he went to the Hawks, he shaved it. So imagine the cult hero status he would have had if he kept the fro.
Mate, we had a few too many cult heroes at that time as it was, so we couldn't afford another one with guys like Matty Spanger and stuff like that coming across. There was a few. So I think Josh Gibson was back at the Hawks for a reunion this past bye weekend, and he's in ripping nick. I mean, the man could probably pull on the jersey this week.
EJ Whitten Legends game, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. He'll tear it up if his physique was anything to go by at the function the Hawks had. So those were some cracking players. Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sure another favourite of yours, Dan Howe. I'm sure you miss him.
Old Crazy Eyes himself. Yeah, he was afraid of his own shadow, Dan Howe. I think.
Yeah, afraid of the ball too, from what I saw.
There's
not in the twos though. He's good in the twos.
No, he was a phenomenal VFL player, and I think he was indicative of a lot of Hawthorn players at that time that were kind of depth players that could come in and play a role in a really good side, but when they weren't supported, let's say, or carried by elite players, they probably were found out at the AFL level, but were incredibly good VFL footballers.
And give me your favourite Jed Anderson moment, please.
Oh, there was a couple. To be honest, I was a huge Jed Anderson fan early doors. I actually thought he was going to be the next big thing at the Hawks, and he was just as hard as a cat's head. Like, I think that's the thing I really enjoyed about him. He'd crack in. He wasn't built like, especially when his time at the Hawks, he wasn't built like you would expect a real tough inside midfielder to be built, but he was so hard at it. And there was chase down tackles. He took a big hanger. I can't remember who it was against, and he kicked a goal and might have laid a big tackle all in the one game. And you know when somebody's breaking onto the scene and they show these elite level attributes and signs, and you go, "This kid's got it." Well, that was a "this kid's got it" moment for me. It turns out we didn't really see the best of Jed Anderson, which is a real shame. But I think North got a bit better Jed Anderson moments than we did.
Yeah, I remember his second year with us. He bulked up massively, got the man bun, bulked up, and then all of a sudden he looks like he's straight from the country, and you're like, what happened in the off season, mate? Because we were sort of having him as like a half forward flank, like a running half forward flanker. And, it's interesting to see your point of view where he was considered like a tough nut at the Hawks, because when he came along, I definitely didn't see him like that at all. I thought he was just running half forward flanker, and that's where we tried to play him. And he was shocking, mate, when he's the first year with us. I remember him butchering everything.
Well, kicking wasn't his strength, right?
Well, I found that out. So, but then I don't know what happened. He got on got on some sort of gear, and then all of a sudden, bang, he came back with huge biceps and became this, inside mid with big flowy hair and would bully people. And he was great for us for a few years. I really wish Jed I don't know how old he is now. I'm assuming he'd be early 30s, but I really wish he stayed on with North for longer. I know there was some conflict there, but a little bit of potential with Clarkson coming in. He wasn't one of his favourites or something like that because he delisted him and that sort of thing. That was just the speculation at the time. We obviously don't know. But, yeah, look, I liked Jed Anderson, and he was a proper hard nut. So, look, a great dive down memory lane there. We've had a few players go between the two clubs. So, for those watching on YouTube, please put your favourite North/Hawthorn players below. Keep in mind, I'm only 30, so don't bully me for not knowing people from the 70s and 80s. I apologise. Even the 90s, I wasn't there, guys. But I want your knowledge. All you old vets in the North Melbourne chat, please put them down below for me.
Anthony Rock's obviously the other one, Josh.
Yes, I knew of Anthony Rock because I've watched the old premierships and some games from the 90s, but I wasn't there, man. Our first premiership, I was 1, and then 99, I was 4. So that's going to make a few people listening feel very old, but hey, I apologize.
Did Shannon Gibson play for North? Have I got that right?
Shannon
I reckon he did.
Gibson?
Yeah, well, he definitely played for the Hawks. I'm sure.
I don't remember that name. What year are we talking here?
Probably too early for you.
Probably too early for me, mate. I know Shannon Grant and Josh Gibson. I don't know, but that's about all I can pull from that.
Maybe I've lost the plot a little bit here, trying to reach too far back into the memory banks, mate. Josh.
Settle down. You got to settle down.
Leave it for
mate,
the guys in the YouTube comments.
All right. I want the Rogus North Melbourne Hawthorn shout below.
Please.
Winner. I don't know. I'll like the comment and reshare it or something and say hello to you. Maybe we'll do something like that. Whoever puts the Rogus player between the two clubs down below, you win. Don't know what you win. You win respect from me and from Danny here, which is ultimately the greatest thing of all.
It's the best we can give anyway.
Well, thank you for joining me, mate. I'm glad we got through this pod eventually. What an absolute road that has been. But thank you, mate. I appreciate all your insight and thank you for jumping on.
No, thank you so much for having me. I think most of the tech issues were my fault, so I apologise for that.
I wasn't going to say anything, mate. I've just been holding it against you subconsciously.
the further north guys need to know. The community needs
That's
to know.
right.
That was on me. I'll be better for the next time. But
Yeah.
thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and all the best for every weekend outside of this weekend.
Thank you, mate. Thank you so much to Danny for his time. That one took a little bit to get through. Apologies. We had so many technical issues. So that one was a little bit choppier, but fantastic interview. Great guy. And lots of knowledge on Hawthorn. So thank you very much, Danny, once again for jumping on. Okay. Live team reaction. This is an interesting one. The big one is Darling, obviously with his injury, went in for plastic surgery, and Clarko in his press conference said he will be selected, but will he actually play? They're not going to know till about an hour before. So that's going to be an interesting one. Other than that, you can't really drop anyone after last week, and I don't really want to make too many changes. Off the top of my head, I can't think of anyone else. There was no injuries really from the game other than Darling. So I'd probably keep it similar. When we're looking at matchups, Hawthorn is a much smaller team. If Darling goes out, I'd probably bring in a key tall, and Will Dawson would be that one I would pick. Is really the only one up there. I mean, Finbar, yes. But I would maybe like to see Will Dawson as a first round pick getting an opportunity to play. As for our defense, I'm a little bit nervous because their forwards, it's quite a small forward line. I mean, Chol with Gunston, who's not a big guy, and then your Ginivans and your Wizards and things like that down there. And we don't have Jackson Archer in and anyone else who can really cover those guys. McDonald sort of can do a job. He's done pretty well at covering people this year. Hardiman as well could potentially, we haven't seen him tag much though and play on somebody, and those smalls for the Hawks and their midfield flood forward can be dangerous. So, I think we're bigger and more physical than them, and if we can keep the ball off them and long down the line might suit us. But if they get it on the outside, I worry. So the only other thing, I guess, is maybe Wardlaw. I'm assuming Wardlaw stays in, and I wouldn't be against that. But I also wouldn't be against maybe being like, hey, mate, we need you to really be at your best. You're a top 3 pick. We know what you can do. We need to find a way to get you back to that. And maybe someone comes in now. Of course, Phillips is the one people think about. I don't think Phillips plays again, unfortunately. But that is just kind of the way it is. So anyway, let's not hold everyone up too much. Let's have a look at the team. 3, 2, 1. Charlie Comben. Okay, not bad. I think I did say after the game that maybe we rest him for the Hawks because we've got more winnable ones coming up. Questions to be asked maybe about the medical staff then, if they're allowing him to play and now he's out. Would like an explanation on that. If they've, it's a bit suspect if, some guy has a bone fracture and then you put them in. Mate, he looked like he had nothing left in the tank by then. He was in so much pain. And then not to play the next week. Hopefully the medical staff can learn from that. Not trying to blame anybody, but, it's their job to make sure this doesn't happen. So don't love to see that. Hopefully he's not out too long and it's just a week off and can come back next week. Will Dawson in, though, is the exciting thing. Will he play back or will he play forward? I guess it depends. I could see him playing forward if Larkey doesn't get up. Larkey doesn't get up. Oh, my God. Jack Darling doesn't get up. My bad. Apologies. But I feel like Darling probably will, to be honest. I feel like Darling probably will. And then Will Dawson would go on the back line, which makes it taller, which is a little bit I get a bit nervous about that, to be honest. Have they got, who else is playing in their forward line? Cal Shadir's not there. So it's not Chol and Gunston, really. And other than that, it's smaller guys. So, and they don't really have like a resting ruckman that goes there, as far as I know. So anyway, very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. I hope Dawson plays forward, and that's in case Darling doesn't play. It'll be interesting to see if Darling does play. Will Dawson be a late out? He's currently named on the bench. Interestingly enough, with the emergencies, CCJ, I'm telling you, he's playing before the end of the year. My gut is telling me that. All the chat coming out of the twos is he's playing very, very well down there, which is exciting because, look, I was the OG CCJ guy. Don't get me wrong. I've got receipts for that. And I jumped off the train, but I don't know, man. I can't believe this is still in the back of my brain. Will Phillips and Cooper Harvey are the emergencies as well. So that is very, very interesting. Callum Common-Jones being the emergency maybe suggests Will Dawson will play. And then if Darling comes out, maybe CCJ comes in. Very interesting team. Combin out is, I I don't know. Let me know how you guys feel about that. Am I overreacting a little bit and saying the medical staff need to be better than that? Let me know. Put the comments down below if you're watching on YouTube. Please subscribe, all that sort of stuff. So, wow, what a time to be alive. We've got a bit of news coming out this week. Let's go to a little bit of news. I've just written some notes here. Sorry, I'm looking off screen. Okay, a few things to get to here. One, the Toby Pink hype this week has been insane. I don't know if I've seen something grip social media, and I understand it's not everyone's feeds because the algorithm will make it for North fans. The AFL is posting about, and they're pretending they've made the Pink Pony Club. There's so much going on with Toby Pink this week from every single outlet. It is unbelievable. What a week he has had. And for me, getting to chat to him at the start of the week, really getting on the hype train early with Toby Pink. And I mean, we've been saying all year, this guy needs to be playing. When he got dropped after that D's game, I came on this pod and said, that is shambolic, absolutely shambolic. He was very, very good. So, and against Adelaide, he was good and that sort of stuff as well. So anyway, I love that Toby Pink is getting his flowers this week. When I got to chat to him, and I chatted to him a little bit off camera as well, seemed very, very shy and like introverted guy, but on the football field, an incredibly confident guy. And my love for Toby Pink has skyrocketed. And for him to give me some of his time, if you haven't listened to the interview, it's out now, Spotify, Apple, YouTube. It's great. It's only a 15-minute chat to him, but yeah, I think he's turning into one of my favorite players. And after getting to chat to him, fantastic. Tristan Xerri has signed a 2-year extension on top of his long extension. So he is contracted now until 2031, which is great because he's only 26, played about 70 games, I believe. And we got him on that deal just before he exploded. Now, we could have definitely held him to that deal and not paid him more, but North as a club doing the right thing by their players. If Xerri became a free agent a year later after his breakout season, his contract would have been gigantic. So it's really good to see they've looked after him and sort of hopefully paying him closer towards what he is worth without obviously cooking our cap, but it's good to see. So a 2-year extension on top of his 5-year deal, originally to 29, now to 31. I love to see it. North fan as well, Xerri, if you didn't know. So look, I had my beef with him too early on. We all did, but I love that guy. Absolute cult hero for us with that helmet. So that's good to see. The interesting and slightly negative one is the 1975 premiership team. Some members of it are complaining that the AFLW team is getting celebrated for their season on the same night. Now, I'm just going to give you my opinion on this, and I've got the article up here, so I might just have a little bit of a read of it for you guys, just so we can understand exactly what's going on. So, I mean, a quote from John Ralph on Sam Kekovich. I don't know, did Kekovich say this or not? Anyway, Sonia Hood has tried and failed to convince him. This is from John Ralph talking about Kekovich. Sonia Hood has tried and failed to convince Sam to try and change his decision. His stance he feels the club attitude is representative of a club that doesn't revel in the shinboner history. Now, feels like, and look, giving my opinions on this, I know there's many different age groups all listening to this, and this is not targeted at anybody listening to this podcast, just my 2 cents on this topic. And if you guys disagree, please, it's a respectful place. Put your thoughts down below on it, but I don't want any crazy political discussions down in my comment section, please. But incredibly boomer take from me, just because you have the W team being successful doesn't mean you've lost your shinboner history. Now, to counteract that, do I think that they should be celebrated on the same night? Probably not. I guess it's our first premiership team, and that should be its own thing. I've heard that it's a stand-up event, not a sit-down event. I've never heard something so petty in my life, by the way. I know they're in their 70s and 80s and stuff, and you can sit down, but a sit-down dinner, people getting upset it's not a sit-down dinner. It's just so ridiculous. They're putting on a function for it. It's like a cocktail function at a bar or a venue that you can walk around. I'm sure there's plenty of seats and tables you can sit on. So, 1, I think that's so ridiculous. 2, the women should have their own thing and the 75 team should have their own thing, right? That is what I believe. But if they're together, the outpour of negativity towards it doesn't matter, guys. It's it's not disrespecting our 75 team. It's not disrespecting the ladies. It's just a North Melbourne function where everyone comes together and we celebrate the club. The girls are part of the club too. The old guys are still part of the club as well. So I know people's opinions will differ on this. I do, if it was up to me, I would say definitely make them separate. But the fact it's not doesn't worry me at all either. People shouldn't care about this, in my opinion. This is such a non-issue. Another section from an article here. Off-field drama, and this is on Fox Sports. Off-field drama has emerged ahead of North Melbourne's centenary celebrations next Thursday night, with reports some of the club's 1975 VFL Premiership team are boycotting the event due to the simultaneous celebration of last year's AFLW Premiership. The Kangaroos informed those invited to the celebration a month in advance before the club's fixture with the Western Bulldogs, where all 6 of North's 300-game players will be recognised on the Marvel Stadium turf. Get down to that game. Bay 29 tickets are available for that game too. I will be in Bay 29. Please get in there with me. But the likes of Premiership player Sam Kakovic and grand final hero John Burns are not expected to be in attendance, reportedly discontent with last year's AFLW side sharing the spotlight. The celebrations of the club's 100 years align with the 50th season since the club's inaugural VFL flag. Two sides to look at it, like I said. Should they be celebrated separately? I believe so. Is it an issue and something to kick up a stink about, though? No, it feels very petty to me, just personally. Maybe not the way that those two guys would have liked to celebrate it, but is it really worth kicking up a stink about and not coming at all? I think, that's acting like a bit of a child, to be honest. If you're not going to turn up at all, just because they're celebrating the women winning a flag as well, it's petty. I understand different generations and different views and things like that, but I think it's a little bit petty. So yes, they definitely should have separated them, but to make it a bigger issue than it is ridiculous, and they're acting like children, personally. If you do disagree with that, completely understand. But hey, we're all here, and keep it respectful in the comments, guys, okay? The only other thing to touch on is a little bit of contract talk and speculation. And this is coming from Ruse Centric on Instagram. Fantastic page. Please go and follow. I just want to give them the credit for this because I follow that page and they give really good updates. So if you are looking for fantastic North Melbourne updates, Ruse_Centric on Instagram, please go over and follow their stuff. So they have said, our top priority is locking in Colby McKercher long-term. While there has been no progression on a new deal for Dersma, both are out of contract at the end of 26. So they're working on that. That's via Cal Toomey. Toomey also suggests North could look to trade its future first-round pick, naming Bergman and Starcevic as potential targets. I mean, I wouldn't mind Bergman. Starcevic, how old is he now? Anyway, I'll look at that in the offseason. The club has little appetite to move up in this year's draft order, which I think is smart. Pink is expected to secure greater job security with a new 2-year extension. And all of these guys are also out of contract. Banch, CCJ, Malley, Trembath, Core, and Constanti expect to go on for another season. That is good news. I would probably keep all those guys around as well. CCJ is one we talked about a little bit before, but if he's playing as well as he's in the VFL and he signs a team-friendly deal, keep him around and let's make him earn it because he does have talent. We'll see. Phillips is expected to seek a move elsewhere with Eagles in the box seat. We already knew that. Bailey Scott is again expected to explore options elsewhere. Imagine that a couple of years ago. Remember that when we were like, no, don't leave. Bailey was so stoked he re-signed. It's crazy how it changes. But he's not apparently generating much interest. With Constanti Core, while it's been reported that Core and Constanti have triggered clauses extending their deals through 2026. That's right. So Constanti and Core did trigger that. So a lot of players out of contract at the end of year 2, but we'll get into that after. So there's your news update this week. Thank you to Ruse_Centric on Instagram for that. Not trying to take someone else's content. Want to give them a massive shout out. Lots of people listen to the pod, and hopefully you guys can get over there and consume their stuff. Anyway, I think that's about all, guys. Let's go to some tips and we'll get you out of here. Port and Carlton, Port 33-2 at time of recording this in the first quarter. I've tipped Port in my work footy tipping, so we'll keep that. Sydney, Western Bulldogs, that's probably game of the round, to be honest. SCG, give me the Bulldogs. The Bulldogs need to win that one, I think, if they're going to remain in touch with the 8. I know they're in there on percentage over the Suns right now, but I don't know. Bulldogs feel like they've been fantastic all year, and then they're sitting equal ninth, to be honest. So that's a weird one. Give me the Bulldogs. We're not confident about that. Gold Coast, Melbourne. Give me the Gold Coast up at People's First Stadium. What a rubbish name. Hawks North. Yeah, I'm going to stick with, I think we go down by maybe 4 or 5 goals. But I think this week is a massive one to test how we have improved. And 124 points last time, like we touched on with Danny. This is a massive game, not necessarily to win, but to show that what we have shown the league in the last, 6 weeks is real. If we get smashed, and I think the Hawthorn and the Geelong games for the rest of the year are the danger games for me. I think they're the two I look at that I could see us getting a big belting again. And the rest I think will keep really close. But I'm going to back North and say we keep it close because they've really proven me wrong. Not wrong, but they're really proving everyone else wrong. And I was a little bit more skeptical, but they're sort of slowly turning me around a little bit as well. So that's good. Collingwood West Coast, I mean, who cares about that? You know what my answer is. Richmond Adelaide, I mean, it's got to be Adelaide. That's awful games. And Freo St Kilda, I mean, might be an okay game. Freo should win pretty comfortably though, I guess, but the Saints weirdly turn up sometimes, which is so strange. Anyway, I'll go Freo. So there you go. Thank you to everyone who's come down to the barbershop this week. Really, really cool to see that many people coming down and chatting North and all that sort of stuff. Still time. I'm working on Friday and Saturday. So if you would like to come down for a haircut, please do. It'll be fantastic to see you. Black and Brown Barbershop in Mitcham. Go on the website, request Josh, and put Further North in the comments for extra special service. Like, follow, subscribe. YouTube's doing really well for me. The best way to support the show for all the fans out there who want to support is doing all that sort of stuff. It's free to like, it's free to comment, it's free to subscribe, and that stuff does really help me. And just watching the videos really helps me on YouTube. That's the way I get a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of revenue from it to put back into the podcast for new gear. I'm going to try and get a better camera and all that sort of stuff. So if a few people have messaged to say, how do they support the show? Watching on YouTube and following and subscribing and that sort of stuff is the best way to do it right now for me. Anything else comes up in the future, I will let you know. This podcast has gone long enough. I'll chat to you guys very, very soon. See ya.